Seems fair to me.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it. Unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Thanks for keeping the candle in the window. We were gone last week, but we're glad to be back. Starting with our media veteran herself from the Big 550 KTRS. She is Wendy Weiss. Sitting in for Bill McClellan, who's taking a week off, Joe Holleman from STLtoday.com and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. From the Riverfront Times and now the Big 550 KTRS, Mr. Ray Hartman. And from 97.1 FM News Talk and the 590 and STLmag.com and the St. Louis American with the longest resume in the Western Hemisphere.
My smile, I can't hold it.
Alvin Reed. All right. We got to work on our little extra jobs there because this guy is really, he's got like 3 guys' jobs.
Yeah. Unemployment must be up.
I'm telling you. Hey, Joe Holleman, I want to ask you, speaking of unemployment, Confederate Railroad is going to be unemployed because it was disinvited from the DuQuoin State Fair. What's Confederate Railroad? It's a country western band that was scheduled, but because it has a Confederate flag in some of its videos and because of its name, the governor of Illinois, Mr. Pritzker, decided to disinvite them. Then Josh Hawley went ballistic when he learned that Nike, after producing some shoes with the Betsy Ross flag, actually at the suggestion of former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick, pulled all the shoes back from the store shelves. So we're kind of in the middle of culture wars here, aren't we?
I think that's unfortunately what it boils down to. I do believe there's a difference in that there's an issue with the Confederate flag. I am no fan of the Confederate flag. I have big problems with it. I think it stands for a lot of things that would be best put behind us, and seeing the flag as a reminder, I find it offensive, personally. I also think that the state has the right, or anybody, a landlord, a place of a private concert hall could say, we don't want you to fly this flag or a Nazi flag or what have you. I guess, though, it seems like that in the end isn't what people are looking for out of it. They're looking for a reason of what they call, the virtue signaling, that we're going to find these things to go to these culture wars on. And we're going to constantly take the bait, and you're going to have to declare which side that you're on, that you're pro this or pro that. Mm-hmm. And you know what I feel sorry for then at the end is what I feel sorry for is the 2 other bands that were supposed to be on with Confederate Railroad. They were the headliners. Now people aren't going to show up for their concert. But I'm not going to defend the use of the Confederate flag. The Nike thing, I applaud Josh Hawley for calling Nike out. I think the one thing out of both of these issues that we can agree on is Nike is amazing at selling shoes. They signed Colin Kaepernick for selling shoes, and now they have Josh Hawley going after them for selling shoes. That said, where in a perfect world, they just wouldn't advertise Nike for free. I'll give Josh Hawley credit for calling him out on it. It's ridiculous.
But you said about taking the bait. Well, I think you're taking the bait on the Nike thing because I believe this entire thing was concocted. There was never any I don't think, video of Colin Kaepernick actually saying these words. It was reportedly he said, and where are these shoes at? I want somebody to take me to the warehouse where there's 350,000 pair of shoes. Where is it at? Well, I don't believe it exists.
Welcome to the bait-taking club. You just took it too. We're all doing it.
Well, and then too,
I wish we weren't talking about it.
If Josh Hawley fell over in the woods and nobody was there, would he make a noise? I mean,
well,
really?
Let me say this about Hawley. First of all, everybody wins in this particular story. Nike's in the business of selling shoes. Much to a lot of people's surprise, when they inked a contract with Colin Kaepernick, which caused great outrage on the right, sales went skyrocketing. And Colin Kaepernick, first of all, he's got a right to his opinion, and he didn't make the decision about the shoes. They did. They did it as a calculated business thing. As far as Josh Hawley, he wins too, because of what I think was it Bill that calls it compulsive outrage disorder, which I've always argued is equal on the left and the right. A lot of times it's fashionable to say it's just on the left, but in fact, Hawley is like, who cares? I mean, if he's making political
He's
points
a U.S.
out of
senator, one of 100.
But look,
And
he's in a political business like Nike's in the shoe business,
And he's protecting
cashing
the
in.
jobs that were making the shoes.
He's not protecting
in
jobs. He's
Missouri.
he's
Several
protecting
hundred of them,
votes.
yeah. I mean, that's
the thing about
No,
Confederate
actually, he
Railroad,
was
but I will
going
say,
against Nike. He was going against the
He's
person
protecting
employs.
He
He's
was.
saying that they need to start the production again, to start
in St. Charles, where they
in
have
St.
650
Charles
workers.
and apologize to the laborers.
But the
Josh
thing about the
Hawley's
Confederate
getting
Railroad, I
votes.
would say, and I disagree with you. I'm uncomfortable when the government is the censor, just as I was when on Capitol Hill there was an artist from St. Louis who, in his artwork, had portrayed police as either swine or dogs. You had to kind of make that call. But the police didn't like it. They wanted to take it down. And I support it. I don't think the government should be censoring art or music bands. And if there's a lot of people who like, the Confederate Railroad, just because of their name,
But
to get rid of them?
All right, but you have to, if I am the government, be it state of Illinois, whatever, in some way, shape, or form, I'm supposed to be representing everyone who resides in my state.
Right.
And if truly
Exactly.
it's an example of something that truly people have a problem with, then maybe I would think twice about it. Now, here's the common sense side, and I know that never wins out. Who was going to be at this concert that would have a problem with it? Now, somebody might show up to protest or something like that, but
What I think
it was
is
a faux issue.
Right.
And what I think is
Exactly.
fascinating
But I agree
is
with their
all of
decision.
this is cover your tracks, if you will. Because before it was brought to the attention of whomever in whatever office, the Confederate Railroad or Confederate whatever their names are, they were fined
It's
for the state fair.
signed a contract.
So hello.
I agree.
Who was at that meeting?
But here's the thing. It's not just like these are two examples. You can think of three in the last week. Within the last week, the city of Charlottesville decided to eliminate Thomas Jefferson's birthday as a city holiday. In Cleveland, they replaced Chief Wahoo with just the C for the Indians game, for the All-Star game. And in San Francisco, they're taking down a mural of George Washington at a public school. So it's like happening every day in this country where someone's views are getting suppressed by somebody else.
Well, Charlie, and I agree with you, but I think that's the problem. When I think of the term culture wars, it's when you said faux wars. But we're not looking for a solution here. What is being sought in the great court of public opinion is, okay, Nike stopped these shoes because of Colin Kaepernick, and one side marks up a victory on their side.
Right.
They're not really discussing the issue. They're not coming to any solutions, but then the right will win one, and then they mark that up for their side. And it goes back and forth, and we keep talking about it, and the protesters get the attention,
I remember when
and
the
it goes
Nazis
on and on.
marched on Skokie, and I was in school, could not even believe it. And the professor said, that's what this country is all about.
Right.
That's
Which
what
I-
this country
they
is.
marched
And I praised
You, that's the reason
I have
why you were such a big
grandparents
part of
killed
that.
by the Nazis.
Right, right.
And think the ACLU was right to defend them in the street. The problem is we have a race problem in this country. We have a great racial divide. We have great race issues of in terms of in the business community, in government. There's some substantive, and we never talk about them. We all nibble around the edges on the symbolism. And I, for one, am just tired of the symbolism on both sides. And I don't want to sound like Donald Trump saying both sides now, because I'm not equating anybody. But just it'd be nice if we actually addressed real issues.
Good point.
I think
Okay, here's
affirmative
a real
action's
issue.
an issue.
Good point.
We ought to be
Okay.
talking about
Ray,
it.
good point. Let's
Okay.
move on to a real issue. This week, the governor signed the bill, and it's going to go into effect, where the Enterprise Center, home of our St. Louis Blues,
Right.
Gloria and all that, going to get $70 million over 2 decades of state money. Now, already the case had been made that there should be city subsidy for the Enterprise Center. After all, it is the city of St. Louis owns it technically. However, you've written about this. How do you feel about state tax dollars, which are already supporting the Edwards Jones Dome, $12 million a year, now throwing money into the Enterprise Center?
It's really an unbelievably bad thing. And let me do all the disclaimers. I bleed blue. You've all heard me say that many times. Very proud, excited about the Stanley
Longer
Cup.
than anybody.
This is whatever.
Truly.
The point is,
Truly.
and I want to say this, Tom Stillman is the model owner. The anti-Jerry Jones.
Great guy.
He's there to shake hands with people when they come to the games. Right. He's a terrific guy. All that, great. This is an outrageous waste of taxpayers' money, and it's not just here. They extended $3 million a year each for 10 years for the Chiefs and the Royals in Kansas City. It's $130 million of general revenue over, I don't care if it's over 20 years or 200 years, that a state that last year was $26 million lower than the threshold it was supposed to meet for public defenders. We were at 1.50th. The highest is 46th in pay for our state employees. We're near the bottom in corrections, which is a formula for more crime when people come out. We are underfunding education. We underfund social services,
bridges, right.
and we have the money to give multimillionaires maintenance money on their stadiums.
It was ever thus.
Well, it's wrong.
I think it's wrong. I think
it's
wrong.
Yeah, I think tips are wrong. But the horses and animals are out of the barn door.
It's wrong. That's right. It's wrong.
I am fine. I mean, in terms of, I would be I think that the Blues have been the very patient, redheaded stepchild at the public trough for a long time.
I disagree.
And I think that as I've said before, we are levitating over this Stanley Cup. So let them.
I will say that throughout the last 30 years, the St. Louis Cardinals have been given anything that they wanted.
Thank you.
And for these other teams, especially on the other side of the state, to get a little piece, money, I can't be mad at the state for that. I mean, they are just as important as that GM Foundry, that he signed that, the GM, not Foundry, where I used to work, where there was a foundry. The GM Center in Wentzville just got money. He signed off on a lot of things. Now, I think they stand out because they're sports teams. Why would you give the Blues money? Why would you give money? We give money to all kinds of businesses.
Let me say something.
That's a fact. Now, let me put this in perspective, though.
And they bring business.
Boston, Massachusetts, where the TD Garden is, where the Bruins play, they're renovating it, $100 million. Tim Logan, formerly your colleague, right? He writes in the Boston Globe, there's not a penny of public subsidy there. And don't forget, the Blues owners, I love them too, they just bought out their minority partners. They have the money to buy out the minority partners, but they don't have the money to renovate the center.
That was like me buying you out. That's my money, okay? And
yeah, exactly.
No.
Exactly.
But my money is different
Charlie,
than
what about
Blues
the Cardinals?
money. That's different.
No, there should be Blues money.
No, it's
Stillman and all the others should pay for these renovations.
Alvin's point, I want to say something to Alvin's point. First of all, 2 wrongs, 3 wrongs, 4 wrongs, 5 wrongs don't make a right. And yeah, about the Cardinals, no question. Although the Cardinals didn't get the $250 million that some of us fought against that they wanted from the state. They got too much. But the fact is this, that the Blues did get $67 million from the city, which was done a couple years ago. Understand something. When Enterprise Center, when the Enterprise name, the Blues get 100% of that revenue. When a concert, if the Globetrotters play here or Sheryl Crow plays at the Enterprise Center, the Blues get all the rental money for it. It got nothing to do with hockey. The city, the only thing the city gets out of the building is sales tax, ticket tax, and parking in the garages. And my point is, and then the Blues.
Go move on.
Okay,
but
it's just, and I love the Blues as much as anybody here. This got nothing to do with the Blues.
Let's move on to another topic. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Alvin Reed, another homicidal tragedy, this time 5 guys in North St. Louis County, I believe. And the only thing I have to say about it, I was surprised it didn't get national attention. In fact, it was first reported on page 3A of the paper, and then when they found the guys and charged them, the perpetrators, alleged perpetrators, I should say, that was page 5A. Were you a little surprised by this?
My first reaction when I first read the headline of what happened was, why isn't this a bigger deal? Now, then you find out the circumstances that, it was just a bad decision and then they ripped off some killers and end up getting killed. Okay, but this is heinous. I mean, 5 people gunned down in the daytime or whatever. It's just horrible. And it should chill us all. And stories like this should be bigger news in St. Louis. We cannot just be anesthetized to the point where we don't recognize when really horrible things happen within miles of where we live.
Technically, it's a mass shooting.
But we have been having these statistics for as long as you and I have been on this program.
But 5 not in the same house.
Every single summer,
5 people
the
gunned down.
homicide rate is
but
going higher.
5 people gunned down in the same household at the same time.
And I agree with you. I mean, in terms of desensitization, when you think of the national supermarket, 32 years ago, we've recently mark that. 32 years ago, this city came to a standstill because those employees were murdered in cold blood on the job. You know, blacks, whites, everybody. I mean, it was. You know, you had 3 white victims, 2 African American victims. And the whole city was in an uproar. Today, nobody blinks.
And I think before you put too fine a point on it, or too philosophical a point of getting desensitized to violence, which we have been, I agree. In the newspaper business, when you have, for the lack of a better word, the quote unquote, when you said be a mass shooting, or if somebody walked into a business and killed 5 people there, that's different than 2 alleged drug dealers, killers, walking in with people who may have owed them money for their product and shoots them. The victims are different. Murders tend not to be judged by the public on who did the killing, but more who was killed. And so you have 5 people who are not qualified as innocent victims, and anybody who knows from working at a newspaper knows what I'm talking about.
I understand.
And so to say that they're all equal, and I would bet you, and if I'm wrong, I'll pay the $5. But I'll bet you I can go in the United States, look at the last 6 months, and find some place in the United States where 4 or 5 people were killed in a house, and we didn't know about it. I don't understand why you thought it would be a national story when we've exceeded it both philosophically with numbers and craziness, and also by the virtue of there's not a whole lot of seemingly innocent players in this. But all of that gets judged into how much coverage.
The little girl on the street corner holding her slice of pizza. Completely different situation.
I get that.
Everybody talked about it for
there's
2 or 3 news cycles.
The hierarchy of death. I coined that phrase at a paper. I understand that. I get that. But anytime 5 people get gunned down in your city, in your region, I guess I don't know people because it actually happened in the county. I'm sorry. There needs to be a stronger reaction. Because here, once again, this is not to throw another topic out there, but here's Wesley Bell, once again, every 2 months it seems like somebody's screaming for the death penalty in St. Louis County suddenly. And that's the first thing I thought. Now, what do you do with these 2 idiots? I mean, they go to, it's just.
Well, honestly, Alvin, I believe there's a lack of reaction to a whole. When one 10-year-old is killed, I am surprised at the lack of response to that from the community.
Can I say, first of all, the reason it's not a national news story is the national news didn't pick it up for the reasons that there's so many that they didn't pick it up. Now, to Alvin's point, I think we ought to be having a reaction. I mean, I don't know that it's so much a media issue as at what point does the community writ large figure out a way to react to this. I do not think if Wesley Bell ran for office with against the death penalty, whether
that was
there's
just a story.
I know what you're saying.
The point
I'm just saying,
is that
I understand.
That's an angle
I get
that
it.
could be followed
but I'm just
up,
saying that's
and
his
there's lots
position.
of stories that could be attached to this that.
I agree. I get you.
Oh well.
I think the question is, there's somewhere in the middle where what are we going to do to address this ongoing violence, and not just assume it's in North City. But I don't think the fact that it didn't get picked up by the
every city's facing that problem in their city. They don't need to go grab St. Louis and say, "Look what's happening in St. Louis."
This is not that novel a national story, quite frankly.
But I think for some cities it is not.
I think the city is looking at St. Louis
in
like
general,
city anyway.
We wouldn't pick this up if we heard about this happening in Boston. We wouldn't be talking about it.
I do disagree a little bit when you say, Joe, it depends who the victim is. Actually, if the shooter was a cop, then it would be different.
Well, I think you're making an exception that makes the rule. Most of the people, there aren't a whole lot of famous people. If a celebrity kills somebody, okay, that goes in.
Sure.
Most of the time, those stories are who is the victim.
Let's
move on. We should move on because of the constraints of the show. Wendy, I want to ask you about Kraftig because you're kind of our local bar expert. Only kidding. Kraftig was a beer produced by Billy Bush, the heir to the Anheuser-Busch fortune. And as it turns out, he announced, I think yesterday, that he's no longer going to brew it. So if you like Kraftig, you have to get to Schnucks or somewhere else by September, and then it'll be done. It's kind of like we hardly knew you, Billy. I mean, it was kind of here. We thought that it would take off. It's a good, smooth lager. What exactly happened here?
I don't know. I mean, I think we all hoped that it would take off for him. I love the idea of a Bush being attached to a brewery. I mean, we're still St. Louis. They're still sort of the de facto royal family. I mean, when I was growing up, they were. But I thought what was fascinating about the article was that somebody who was speaking sort of as a spokesperson for Billy Bush seemed to be making the point that he was up against they called it the Death Star, the giant brewers, and he was actually a part of the Death Star. I mean, the Death Star is his birthright, and it's fascinating that now the birthright is not owned by anybody in St. Louis anymore.
I think that's a really interesting point, but at the end of the day, it's risk and reward capitalism,
Right?
And unless you own a sports franchise. In which case,
exactly so.
if
Good
you own a
point.
sports franchise, then we'll give you money. I would have liked to
His
see him
last
giving
name.
money to Creve Court Cameron to keep them alive too.
Right.
But the point is, unless you own a sports franchise,
Piccioni Bakery.
it's risk and reward capitalism.
His last name is Bush, and I thought he always should have tried to profit off that. I don't know what all the trademark and the copyright is, but some kind of way, Bush or Draft Horse or Clydesdale or something would have been on that name of the beer. So because we know that Kraftig was Billy Bush's. The world didn't know that. And
Something
I think
tells me that with the buying a brewery comes with it all of those goodies, including the name on a
I
beer
don't
can.
think he was gonna-
Clydesdale.
Bush is best. He's a Bush.
I think he had a chase.
But I can't be Alvin's because
don't you think also though tastes have changed and lagers were popular, but now people like ales and the more bitter IPAs and APAs, and maybe he was up against that trend.
Well, I have to admit, I'm diehard St. Louisan, but I'm not fond of Provel, and I'm not much of a beer drinker. But from the outside,
Then you can't be a diehard.
well, now
St.
wine and
You just
cocktails,
can't.
wine and cocktails, I'm fine with.
You got to move somewhere else.
You never
What a
were
fraud.
beer
Can we
guy?
start
And
it
he's
off?
Mr. St.
You
Louis.
just can't stay. I'm
From
sorry.
the outside, it seems like the beer industry to me is breaking down to, like a lot of corporations, 3 or 4 mega corporations
Yeah.
that'll make the vast amount of the beer that the most people drink, and then there will be craft or boutique operations that will appeal to
Right.
the hardcore beer aficionado.
Right.
And I think that's where it's kind of come down to.
Joe, I want to ask you about a development at the state level regarding automobiles. It used to be, in fact it is right now, if your car is 5 years old, you have to get a mechanical inspection. Now that's been moved to 10 years. So your car in years 1 through 9, to get your registration renewed, you don't have to get that mechanical registration for $10. What do you think about this development?
I'm fine with that. I think cars, one, are made better and will last. And there's been moves in a lot of states to do away with inspections. The only reason we still have the emissions inspection is because the federal government funds it. And I just honestly think it was one of those that took people away from work. There was an unnecessary, for what it prevented, which I never saw any figures that said, well, here's how much will be saved. Moving it from 5 to 10 years, I don't have a problem with it at all.
I just think that there are people out there now, they'll be on the same brakes and the same tires for 9 years. That's dangerous, man. That's just not right. I don't know what the alternative is. Maybe you have to get it done every
I see
other
cars
year.
on the street now, Alvin. I don't know how they're there
No, I
now,
see them. I see that too.
And we're doing inspections every 5 years.
No, I think that there's 2 reasons to do inspections: environment and safety. And I don't see any great social benefit to doing away with inspections that collectively protect
us
our
in each
environment
area.
and our safety.
But isn't there kind of a self-interested motivation for the driver to make sure that his or her car is mechanically operating
Have you
properly?
seen some of the
Charlie,
cars
there
they're
you go
talking
again with that
about?
common
Charlie,
sense
there's
stuff.
a
when,
self-interest for the driver to wear seatbelts, but until we have
Yeah,
seatbelt
right.
laws,
There's a self-interest for the driver to wash his vehicle so that he can see out of the back window.
There's a self-interest when we were 23 years old and didn't have any money and flames were coming off
that's
the brake
true.
pads. You're just hoping like, man,
That was my car.
Let me get me home.
Okay.
Get me home.
Okay, let me say one more thing. You need that inspection to get your tags. But if you don't have your tags, no one's pulling you over. You can drive with expired tags. Joe, back me up on this.
That
one.
is
You know what,
You
Charlie?
just answered your
you're
own
the one who
question.
did it, though.
Charlie.
Listening to you talk about it, I finally started paying attention to it. And I finally, one morning, after seeing my 3rd tag that was at least 6 months overdue, I thought, I'm a sap for buying my tags to
That's
drive
right,
in the
'cause
city.
you're a
Why
law-abiding
am I
citizen.
putting this money out there when it's like, you've had it never I know a police officer has to see that.
just like we do.
I mean, yeah, you just pull up behind it. It's like 2018.
1918.
Yeah, well, might as well be. I mean, you know.
If you enforce that, you might be caught on an iPhone. The tape will go viral. You'll be accused of profiling or whatever the case is. So you don't pull people over anymore.
Well, I don't even know what technically it's a ticket. You know, they don't just run you in. So, I mean, you know, people fly by the police, and I've seen it, you know, and they just like right then, I guess he was on the way to Steak and Shake or something like that. And
I'm just trying to think of what you just need to turn this into a company.
Lunch,
I mean, I think you need to have a company. It's like Tag Your It or something that you come up with.
I got an idea.
To make it Brennan's
about-
Tag Enforcement Company.
How about
I
if
think
you're-
it's a
We don't
great,
have to hear
it's
it
a total
anymore.
great, it's a total great side business because I mean, you are right,
Oh, he's
but you're the
converted
only
me
person.
now.
I really congratulate you because you're right and you're the only person really talking
You
about
two
it.
should have a column.
I think it's
Toasted
great.
ravioli and tag.
I mean, I don't-
right?
I hate the
seriously.
pizza.
I'm not
We make the
defending.
worst pizza in
I think
America.
it's interesting you point out because
Okay.
really nobody seems to
Unfortunately,
care about
Ray,
it.
your time is up, and we are not here to be
I
made
like
sport
tags
of.
are it.
Let's go to the old mailbag, shall we? And see what the viewers had to say about last week's, or the show 2 weeks ago. Here's one. Alvin Reed dresses so smashingly, he needs to take the guys on the panel shopping and give them advice on what to wear. I would kill for that shirt that Alvin was wearing. Thank you, Kate Martin of St. Louis. We also heard from Greg Bean. I hate to be the 1,000,000th person to comment on Bill's attire, but was that a University of Wisconsin tie he was wearing on the June 27th episode? If so, go Badgers. Thank you, Mr. Bean. Donnybrook, care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, 63108. Don't forget those emails, letters at ketc.org, and those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL, and you can follow us on your favorite podcast. That might be Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, or Google Play. Thanks to Joe Holleman for sitting in tonight. Everybody, don't go away because we have Donnybrook Your Turn. Wendy and I will take your phone calls and your tweets. Thanks for joining us.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Well, good evening and welcome to Donnybrook. I am with the star of the show, the provocateur, and it was quite a
the discussion.
quite a conversation
Oh,
tonight.
yes.
Kind of heated, like the weather. But today's been gorgeous. So where are we going to start, star of the show?
Well, you're really the star, and Jay is first up to bat. Jay in Normandy, how are you?
Hi, Jay.
Well, fine. I appreciate the chance to get on. Yeah, you know, I thought that was an unbelievable story about the 5 guys killed in that setting and such in a terrible situation. But you know what? The news story of a guy being shot after being tripped on a barbecue grill,
Yeah, that was another one.
and then shot 11 times. I think that was even worse in some ways because the guy apparently was an innocent guy, and it just shows how crazy we are about guns and this need to react culture we're in. I just couldn't believe that story. Am I reading it the right way? That made the newspaper.
Sure did. And if there is any good news, and I know I'm really reaching here, about $400,000 was earmarked for the Better Family Life not-for-profit headed up by James Clark, and they're going to try and address this gun violence, and I hope they can make a dent. Thanks a lot for your call.
In addition to the $600,000 that they had already received, correct?
For another organization.
Yeah.
I think. Well,
No, it was
yeah.
for the Better Family Life, in addition to over and above. So obviously they're seeing some results. Thank you, Jay. Let's go to Barbara in Sunset Hills. Hi, Barbara. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Thank you.
Hi.
I just heard Joe Holleman say that he felt like a fool for paying the $10 to keep his license plate updated with the proper stickers. And I'm just horrified by that. Joe, it's the law.
Well, you're absolutely right. But I think what he's saying is there seem to be so many expired tags and expired plates right now, and that's generally because people aren't paying the sales tax, the personal property tax, their insurance, they're not getting the emissions or the mechanical inspections, and it doesn't seem like anybody's really cracking down on them. Although, my sister got pulled over in Clayton about 2 weeks ago because she didn't have the new tags on her plates. She had registered the new plates. They were under her seat, and so they gave her a warning. But some jurisdictions seem to be turning a blind eye.
Yeah, Barbara, that was Joe's point, that morning he realized that Charlie was right about everything that Charlie had been saying, and most of the time we don't have that experience where we realize that Charlie is right. But no, he was kind of making a little tongue-in-cheek, little stab at humor about the fact that he was the only one that was paying for the tags, and I assure you, he is a law-abiding citizen, as is his wife and his.
Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm sure he is, but I think it's the wrong time for him, or the wrong place for him to make what he thinks is a tongue-in-cheek.
I think a lot of people are able.
I think people were hearing him. Some people listening to this broadcast were hearing him and thinking, "Yeah, that's right.
Well,
I don't want to be a fool
and
not pay for it."
Right. With all due respect, Barbara, and I think that you're probably right in some cases. I think that most people are able to distinguish between when he's being serious and when there's a little bit of sarcasm there. But we thank you for calling, and as I said, with all due respect, and we do appreciate your opinion. Thanks for participating.
Yeah. Gus is in Affton. Hi, Gus.
Hi, Gus.
Hi. Another call about the tag. You know, it isn't so much the year-to-year tag, but I live in an area where there's a parking lot, and I see these temporary tags for people who did not pay their sales taxes. And I saw a report on the local station last week that it cost the state over $25 million last year. Wow. Now, I've seen some of these tags as old as a year, and I think if they're not pulled over and ticketed, shame on us.
Well,
thank you.
You know, on Twitter, if you follow the hashtag expired plate or expired tag, you'll see a lot of the cars that have been captured by people who are bringing out their iPhones and taking a look at the delinquent tags, and they are numerous. But on the other side, the police officers have bigger fish to fry, and frankly, they might get accused of profiling if they pull over too many people, so I think they're leaving well enough alone. But I think it's kind of a cycle. We'll go in the other direction at some point. Thanks so much.
Gus.
Okay, who's next?
Bill in Rock Hill. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Bill.
First time call.
Yeah,
Good
right.
evening.
Yeah. First time tonight.
By the way, you know, Affton's the world's biggest place that doesn't exist, but that's a different story. At any rate, the reason I called in, I was calling in about the Kaepernick shoe thing with Nike. Personally, I would not buy these shoes. Reason number one is a marketing decision. I just happen to prefer New Balance over Nike, and I happen to have my New Balance shoes on right now. But reason number two, I don't know if either one of you were in Scouts or not, but one of the things they used to teach in Scouting was proper respect for the flag. And you were taught there were certain ways to respectfully display the flag, and there were other ways that weren't. And frankly, I don't think putting the flag on the back of the shoe, whether it's the 13-star flag or any flag before or since, is proper flag etiquette. I mean, what happens if you step in the mud, or something worse, if you've been downtown lately and see what some people leave on the sidewalk? What's that going to do to that flag? And like I've noticed frequently when I sit at my desk, I've got my feet resting on the back of my heels. What's that going to do to that flag? So if you want a patriotic shoe, there are plenty of others available. Just go look out online. But I don't think the back of a shoe is a proper place to display the American flag. And I know a number of veterans and people like that that would probably agree with me.
Hey, Bill, thanks for the call. You're probably right, but I think, as Wendy might have said, the horse left that barn a long time ago because for 30 years I've been seeing flag shirts and flags sewed on the bottom of people's pants. And
athletes wrapping themselves
Yeah.
in the flag, beach towels, picnic coolers. So, and most of those, are from the big box, not big box, but they're big box retailers like the Walmarts or the Kmarts or those fine American
Did you see the U.S. women's soccer player drop a flag? And then another player picked it up.
Yeah. Right.
So,
there was a great deal of controversy about that on social media. We thank you, Bill. Good to hear from you. We have some tweets, don't we, Charlie?
Sure do, including this one. Nike's objection to the Betsy Ross flag is based upon the use of that flag by white supremacists. That from JDR 1949.
At Yale Hollander, Ray is angry over $3 million a year for the Enterprise Center. Does he not realize that's barely enough money to cover the cost of a family of 4 to attend a Blues game and have a couple of hot dogs? That is humor at yalehollander.com. Thanks, Yale.
Hey, thanks, Craig Riggins, for tweeting. Violence in St. Louis is out of control. Marches, heavy-handed policing, and the National Guard can't solve the problem. The real solutions are danced around and often avoided. The main ingredient needed is to encourage talk about them. Thanks. You can always tweet #DonnybrookSTL. Thanks for those who are doing that.
Where are we going next?
Oh, how about Jerry and Peevely? Hey, Jer.
Hi, Jerry.
Jerry.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Fine,
Good.
Thank you.
Hey, I can't get this thing about the Nike shoe, especially Kaepernick talking about it, because wasn't he the one that took the knee and wouldn't stand for the national anthem? And now he's getting a lot of money from Nike to endorse their shoe. And the other thing that I want to get to is whatever happened to the actor that claimed that he was beaten up by 2 white men in Chicago, and then come to find out it was 2 African Americans that he paid to beat him up, and he said they called him a lot of racial slurs.
Right.
That would be Jesse Smollett. Right.
Okay.
And
then they decided not to prosecute him. Whatever happened to that?
They're looking into it again, and I think the person who's in most trouble now is it
Somebody
Ms. Fox?
in the DA.
Yeah, the district attorney.
Yeah,
kind of like in our
DA's
case.
office. Because there was a connection. He had some sort of political connections to some high-ranking Chicago politicians of the past. So they opened up some of those records. It's still in the works, but that has nothing to do with the conversation that we had tonight. But in terms of Colin Kaepernick, he is making a lot of money, I think, for offering his opinion, which is great work if you can get it, to the tune of probably, but he's probably making almost as much money. He's not making Donnybrook money, but he's making good money. But I think they're asking him, Jerry, for his opinion on these types of cultural matters. And they're obviously listening, so it's working for everybody involved.
Thanks for your call, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry. Let's go to Chris in St. Louis. Hi, Chris. Welcome to Donnybrook. Your turn. What's on your mind?
Hey,
All right,
Keith. Where's Keith tonight?
Keith is in New Haven.
Keith, are you wanting?
Let's take.
Hello.
Hi, Keith.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Keith.
Yeah, I had a couple things with the car inspections. That's when you get on fixed income and you get older. That's one of the few variables. When you can kind of control what most of your bills you can kind of control. But when you take that car in there to get an inspection, it could be $12, it could be $1,200, and you don't know that.
That's true.
Until they get a hold of you, That's one point as far as inspections. It is kind of, it's a lot for somebody that's just barely making it on a fixed income. So the second one, I don't know if you got a minute. everybody, to me, I kind of think we need like a tournament of ideas. Nobody's going to promote an idea. Republican commentators and people are not going to promote a Democrat's idea and vice versa, and to me, we just need kind of like a showdown, like pick one idea over another, put it up. If this idea is no good, then what's your idea? And I'll tell you what, here's my idea, and it might sound crazy, but I've had it for 35 years. I don't think anybody's entitled to put another person's genetic material in their family tree without it in writing. We got all these half-wanted babies and all that kind of stuff, and to me, that, and now they can take sperm and a skin cell and make a baby and all that.
Keith, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, thank you. No, I sure appreciate it. That was a little off the topic.
We like the idea of the idea fair, though. That's a fine idea.
The Tournament of Ideas.
Or Game of Thrones / ideas.
Right.
Maybe something like that.
Hey, we'll take your phone calls. You can call one right now at 800-221-5382 as we move to Dave in Rock Hill. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
We're fine, thank you.
Donald Trump said it right about how they got social media has taken over the news, okay? And so when they was talking about how come it wasn't front page for too long about the 5 people getting murdered over in St. Louis County, you got to understand it was front page on all the social medias about the 5 people. Of course, it didn't take long for the community to step up and catch these 2 people. But what I want to understand why when this man from Sunset Hill, of course, you guys was on the 4th of July break and wasn't able to covering that, so it didn't make it last week. I'm quite sure it would have. But the man from Sunset Hill, who last name was McLaughlin and happened to be in front of a judge with the same last name but no relation, he got a plea deal with one of the greatest defense lawyers out there, and for 23 years for manslaughter, okay? And that didn't stay on the front page. And think about him. Now, it may have been an accident, I don't know, because, they said he threw into a metal rack, and that would cause her death. But he dismembered her, and I wonder why a person who is dismembered, right? And
Thanks for the call.
in certain but I wonder why that wasn't front page news. And
I thought that was his. If we're talking about the same case in Sunset Hills, Dave, and we thank you for calling, that was the husband who killed his wife of 38 years, I believe, and his sons were actually, I think, asking for the harshest penalty possible.
I missed that one. What was that recently?
This was the sentencing phase. I thought I apologize for not remembering the sort of the order of the story and where we were, but
some of these I just skip. I'll be honest.
Some of them are so grim, but I think you've got a really good point, Dave. Our attention spans are not what they once were. And, you have one sensational story that gets covered wall to wall in social media, and that really has legs, because you'll notice in a lot of social media, those stories come back a year and a half, 2 years later, and you think it's a brand new story. It's not. But we run through, the media in real time like never before, and so our attention is here, and then it's there, and then it's gone. So, don't you agree?
What'd you say?
There, see, made my point. Thank you, Dave.
Mark and Clayton.
Good evening, Ann and Charlie. I'm concerned because I think in our conversation tonight, we've forgotten the lessons taught to us by the Ferguson Commission and relayed to us as a community by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch in the wake of Michael Brown's shooting. And that is that tags are an excuse for local police departments to arrest people and charge them exorbitant fines repeatedly to fill their coffers to support municipal government. In fact, I'm an Episcopal priest, and 4 years ago on Labor Day, I spent the entire afternoon and evening until 2 in the morning bailing out one of my parishioners for 6 fines in 6 different jurisdictions in St. Louis County for the same simple violation of not having tags. And the cost of that, $2,400 for
So-
a woman
so
who
Mark-
had 3 children and was working at a local grocery store.
If you don't mind me
this
asking,
is not funny.
well,
it's not a joke.
how should it be enforced, Mark? Do you believe in emissions inspections? Do you believe that people should pay the sales and property taxes and have up-to-date plates? And if so, how should that be enforced?
Absolutely, I think they should. My concern is that we are placing tonight's conversation in the context of a bit of farcical humor, and I appreciate the sarcasm. I'm not objecting to that at all.
It's not farcical
but I think
humor.
We're ignoring the fact that this has been a tool used by political jurisdictions in St. Louis for decades.
Well, I will say this. How about this?
decades
How
against
about
people of
this?
color.
Reverend, let me ask you. How about this? If your car is parked along the side of the road and it has expired tags beyond 30 days, how about a boot? And then when you pay what you owe the government in terms of up-to-date insurance, your emissions test, your vehicle, your property taxes, your sales taxes, then we unlock the boot. Nobody goes to jail, but you don't get your car until you're paid up. Would that be fair?
No. Charlie, how about this? How about a conversation that involves the person who owns the car is delinquent on paying the fine or paying the fee for the tag and trying to assist him or her in getting a job, getting an education, supporting their family, giving them appropriate health care, letting them do the things that they can do to be productive.
You're out of Clayton, and so am I. And I've seen these cars on Y-Down with expired tags. And I don't think all those people living on Y-Down are down and out on their luck. This is not...
Bet you, Charlie, I'll bet you a dinner at Capitol Grill that the people on Y-Down are not being ticketed 6 times in 3 days and thrown in jail and asked to pay $2,400 in fines.
I'm saying...
As people of color in North County are.
I know... well, I'll say this. Whoever, of whatever color, is not paying for the insurance, that's a hazard. If they hit somebody, that person's going to be out of luck. If they're not paying the sales taxes or the property taxes, the schools suffer. All the people down on their luck that you care about are not getting their services because these taxes aren't going to the government. If you really care for the down and out, we got to make sure that these taxes are paid because it's for the mentally ill, it's for the parks, the roads, the bridge, the police, and the schools.
My concern, Charlie, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, but my concern is that we're looking, I thought tonight, for a simple solution to an extraordinarily complex problem that has a very long history. And I simply urge the panel to be more creative in looking for solutions.
Okay, thanks for the call. I don't happen to think it's that complicated, but I appreciate the call,
No,
Mark.
I think if you, and I, frankly, as another motorist, I have the right, as every motorist does, to know that the cars that I am driving next to have all of the proper maintenance that keeps the driver safe and therefore thereby, keeps all of the other motorists safe. So, everybody has a dog in this race, Reverend. So, but we do appreciate your phone call.
For sure. Bill's in Bonne, Terre. Hi, Bill. Take it away.
Oh, I'm so glad you came to me next. Mark, I appreciate you love people. I love people. But if somebody is driving without license plates, they're most likely driving without insurance. And even if they have insurance, their insurance company isn't going to cover them when their car wasn't properly licensed. That affects me. That affects Wendy. Her name is Wendy, people, not Ann. That affects Charlie. That affects everybody else on the road. Driving is a privilege. You don't have a right to drive. If you don't get your license plates, tow their damn car. That's what they do in Texas. They pull you over in Texas and you don't have license and they've warned you before, they tow your damn car.
Well, I would also say, the person with the expired plate also is likely not to have had the emissions test. And I'll tell you what, that unhealthy air that's spewed or the grime, the dust.
Impacts everybody.
Hey, especially those little kids who live in the city with asthma. Absolutely.
Right.
So if you care about that little kid who's living in dire conditions with asthma. Let's get those dirty cars off the road.
And Bill, we thank you so much for the phone call and for the chivalrous clarification. But if he mistook me for Ann Keefe, that's the nicest thing that's happened to me in about a month. So thank you, Bill. We appreciate your call. We have some tweets, so let's go to the Twitterverse.
She will win 3. Seriously, Charlie? You think cops are afraid to pull people over because they don't want to be accused of profiling in St. Louis? Thanks for the tweet.
At Referee 922, the 5 murders are outrageous, but when you get the death penalty, it is a long and expensive process. A life term does not have the same battle. At Referee 922, thank you for your tweet.
Barotecker 14. I don't like that we cannot have a piece of history, hashtag Betsy Ross flag, on a pair of shoes because it represents white supremacy. It represents much more than just that. It was the first flag of our new USA. Hey, don't forget those tweets, hashtag Donnybrook STL. Thanks so much.
Let's go to Mary in South County. Hi, Mary. Welcome to Donnybrook. Your turn. What's on your mind tonight?
I wanted to compliment Joe Holleman. I agree with the rest of the panel. Yes, we have become insensitive to murders, but unfortunately, it does depend on who the victims are. It's sad. I'm not. A life is a life, and that shouldn't just fly by. Well, one murder should not fly by, but 5, and these. You know, I'm just rolled over by the insensitivity of everyone to just say, oh yeah, 5 were killed. Those men had families. Those men had people that cared about them, if not at the present time, but at one time in their life. It's just a terrible statement about society, and I find it hard to deal with.
Fair point, and we should also remind ourselves that we were not able to hear the 5 men's side of the story. We heard how they were described by others, but they didn't have a chance to defend themselves.
Right, exactly. But Mary, you are right. They, at one point, they were somebody's baby, and every life matters, and it is sad that we are so desensitized to the loss of life. We thank you for your phone call and for your reminder. Where are we going now?
Joe and Alton. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Yeah,
Turn
hi.
your.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to reiterate that your last tweet that was mentioned about the flag. Yeah, the 13th Star flag was our first flag of the United States. It has nothing to do with white supremacy. It never began with white supremacy. They did not take it away from the beginning of the United States of America, and that it should be left alone. I agree it should not be on a pair of shoes where it's desecrated by the previous caller's statement that it could get muddied or respect the flag, but for the white supremacists in this generation, with the millennials taking over history because they're not taught history in schools anymore, to hijack America's beginning and the flag and representation of America beginning, to give it to them is ludicrous. I don't agree with it. I mean, the younger generation today, they don't understand history. They're not taught history in school, they're not even taught history past World War I. They don't even go to the Revolutionary War in school to be taught.
Well, I think they do, because my kids they went to 2 different schools, but you may be speaking about some kids in some schools. But yeah, thanks a lot for the call, Joe. I think you made your point.
Yeah, he did very well. And there is this tendency to think that somehow we nullify the past by erasing it, and we don't. Let's go to Dan in St. Louis. Hi, Dan. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call.
You're most welcome.
I wanted to talk about the Kaepernick deal. I think, I heard something tonight that I thought was probably might be pretty true, which is the media part of it, which I have no idea, but that sounds like there might be some truth to that. But I was thinking prior to that people can spend their time and energy, destroying, and they can spend their time and energy building. I just kind of thought, I wonder in 20 or 30 years, who's going to have the bigger pile of rewards? Kaepernick and Nike for all of their deals, or this guy from this billionaire, I think his name is Smith, that was building on the Martin Luther King legacy, with those college tuitions and everything. And I personally kind of believe that he's going to be in a better position 20 or 30 years from now, which might be why he's a billionaire.
Thanks so much for your call. I think that might be about it for this week's episode. Am I right?
That looks like it's it. I don't think
Yeah.
we can fit any more calls in.
Thanks so much for calling. Really appreciate it.
Have
See
a
you next
great
week.
weekend.
Thank you.